Put a bird on it. Ancient Egypt was way ahead of us. A 3,300-year-old palace mural offers an exquisitely detailed view of several bird species and presents an artistic mystery. A century ago, archaeologists excavated a 3,300-year-old Egyptian palace in Amarna, which was fleetingly the capital of Egypt during the reign of the pharaoh Akhenaten. Situated far from the crowded areas of Amarna, the North Palace offered a quiet retreat for the royal family. On the west wall of one extravagantly decorated chamber, today known as the Green Room, the excavators discovered a series of painted plaster panels showcased birds in a lush papyrus marsh. The artwork was so detailed and skillfully rendered that it was possible to pinpoint some of the bird species, including the pied kingfisher, Cheryl rudis, and the rock pigeon, Columba livia. Recently, two British researchers, Chris Stimpson, a zoologist at the Oxford University Museum of Natural History, and Barry Kemp, an archaeologist at the University of Cambridge, set out to identify the rest of the birds depicted in the panels. An attempt to conserve the paintings in 1926 backfired, causing some damage and discoloration, so Dr. Stimpson and Dr. Kemp had to rely on a copy made in 1924 by Nina D. Garris Davies, an illustrator for the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Their findings were published in December in the journal Antiquity. Among the riddles they tried to solve was why two unidentified birds had triangular tail markings when no Egyptian bird known today has them. Plummeting plumage. For many millenniums, great flocks of birds have soared over Egypt on their twice-yearly passage between Europe and Central and Southern Africa. Beholding these migrations, ancient Egyptians regarded birds as living symbols of fertility, life and regeneration. With the possible exception of cats, no other animal has been so frequently drawn, painted or sculpted in Egyptian art. Perhaps the most striking is the pied kingfisher, commonly called a helldiver, with its black and white plumage, shaggy top knot and slender beak. The bird hunts by hovering, hummingbird-like, above the water, head tilted steeply downward. On spying movement, the kingfisher folds its wings and becomes a speckled blur, plummeting headfirst below the surface and snatching prey with its long, pointed bill. The kingfisher abounds in Egyptian art. On the wall of the Green Room it appears amid the stems and ummels of a dense papyrus thicket at the moment it takes its hell dive. Pigeons, of course. The wild rock pigeon is the progenitor of the common domestic pigeon, that plump rat of the sky that flits from park bench to sidewalk to somewhere dangerously overhead. The painted panels show several rock pigeons, even though they are not native to Egypt's papyrus marshes. Rather, they prefer the region's arid desert cliffs. Dr. Stimpson speculated that the birds were included in the swampy tableau to enhance a sense of a wilder, untamed nature and that they were drawn to the urban setting near the palace because the citizenry was feeding a nascent feral population. In his religious doctrine, Akhenaten had a firm opinion about nature, which was supported and kept alive by Aten, the sun god that he claimed was the only true divinity, said Manfred Biedeck, an archaeologist with the Austrian Academy of Sciences. This could explain why nature alone is depicted in the North Palace. Heaven sent. The Green Room, so named because of its dominant color, may have been designed to create a feeling of tranquility for Akhenaten's eldest daughter, and one of his younger wives, Meritaten, who lived there. The room may have been adorned with perfumed plants and filled with soothing music, Dr. Stimpson said, adding that a masterpiece of naturalistic art would have added to the immersive sensory experience. One particularly calming painting featured a perched bird with rich, chestnut plumage. The researchers have interpreted the creature as either a turtle dove, Streptopelia turtor, whose emollient purring has been described by one birder as the color of ripening grain made audible, or a red-backed shrike, Lanius culrio, known as the butcher bird for its habit of keeping a larder of food impaled on thorns. A winter's tale. Aided by an arsenal of previously published taxonomic and ornithological research, Dr. Stimpson and Dr. Kemp were able to identify the species that had been annotated with triangular tail markings. One is the red-backed shrike, a common autumn migrant in Egypt that often roosts in acacia trees. The other is the white wagtail, Motassa alba, an abundant winter visitor. What accounts for the tail marks? The researchers believe that they may have been the artist's way of indicating the season in which those birds appeared. Ancient Egyptian art features many carefully observed depictions of wild animals and birds. A famous example is the late 18th dynasty, 14th century BC, wall paintings of the Green Room in the North Palace at Amarna, where naturalistic depictions of birds feature prominently. Their taxonomic identity, however, is not resolved in all cases. Here, the authors revisit the facsimiles produced in the 1920s by Nina D. Garris Davies. Mindful of previous works, taphonomy and the interplay between naturalistic observation and artistic license, they employ ornithological resources to conduct a qualitative assessment and propose a parsimonious scheme of identifications, relating the results to long-standing questions concerning ecological and stylistic aspects in the artwork. A trend was started at the northeast corner, and walls of chambers with traces of colored plaster soon began to appear. A little further down, a large piece of decoration was exposed, showing water lilies and papyrus and birds. Newton reference Newton 1924. 294. Animals and birds play a fundamental role in human societies and, as such, figure prominently in the visual record of both ancient and modern cultures. Alves Barboza reference Alves Barboza, Alves and Albuquerque 2018. Indeed, artistic preoccupation with animals, birds and the wider natural world has produced numerous remarkable works, including now iconic visualizations such as the cave art of Lascaux and Chauvet. E. G. Jones Elliott reference Jones, Elliott, White, Culver and Pepin 2019. The Minoan frescoes of Akrotiri and Knossos. E. Massetti reference Massetti 1997, and the immersive imagery of the garden room of the Villa of Livia ad Galinas Albas at Prima Porta. E. Cole reference Cole 2017. Ancient Egypt is, famously, no exception. Animals and birds were crucial in all aspects of daily practical and spiritual life. Evans reference Evans 2010. 1. Birds appear extensively in ancient Egyptian artwork and were of particular significance in religious contexts. Houlihan reference Houlihan 1986. Baleolisser reference Baleolisser 2012. Ikram reference Ikram and Baleolisser 2012. The North Palace of Akhenaten's late 18th dynasty capital at Amarna, 1999–1332 BC, is an isolated building facing the River Nile, standing between the north suburb and the north city. Figure 1. Originally excavated by the Egyptian Exploration Society over 2 seasons between 1923 and 1925, a later re-examination of key areas was undertaken between 1996 and 1999. These efforts revealed a self-contained royal residence, constructed predominantly of mud brick, which included domestic suites, formal reception halls, an open-air temple, gardens, and indications of a menagerie where animals and birds were kept. Newton reference Newton 20073. Whitmore reference Whitmore 1926. Spence reference Spence 1999. Kemp reference Kemp 2018. 338. Of the painted plaster panels that survived time and termites, those that adorned the walls of the so-called Green Room in the northeast court, Figure 1, were remarkable for their character and extent. As they were uncovered, the paintings were recognized as vitally important examples of the school of Akhetaten. Whitmore reference Whitmore 1926. 8. Where the innovations by which the era of Akhenaten is peculiarly marked attain something like a culmination. Davies reference Davies and Frankfurt 1929. 61. They have since come to be regarded as masterpieces of ancient Egyptian art. Houlihan reference Houlihan 1986. 103. Weatherhead reference Weatherhead 2007. 143. Featured in these paintings are some of the most skillfully rendered and naturalistic images of birds known from dynastic Egypt. The surviving art of the North Palace can be classified into two themes. In the Northeast Court, the most common theme is fowl feeding scenes. Weatherhead reference Weatherhead 2007. 147. These depict human figures feeding ducks, cranes, storks and geese against an invariably yellow ground with large red pots and dotted with red grains and scattered white or gray feathers. The fowl feeding scene from the south wall of room 7 includes a most lifelike representation. Newton reference Newton 1924. 298 and possibly the only identified example of a grey-lag goose. The second theme is the water bank design. Weatherhead reference Weatherhead 2007. 147. Figure 2, remnants of which were found throughout the North Palace. In contrast to the fowl feeding scenes, which are presided over by humans, the water bank design depicts birds amidst thickets of riverside plants, including lotus, Nymphaea crolea, and papyrus, Cyperus papyrus, with a stylized river at the base. The green room, room 12, one of two small, interconnected rooms. Figure 1 was so named due to the dominant color and extent of this theme. Davies reference Davies and Frankfurt 1929. 58. The adjoining room, No. 11, was apparently an architectural duplicate, though no artwork survived. Both rooms are characterized by two rows of niches in the walls. Figure 1, the significance of which has been the subject of much speculation. E. Davies reference Da.